What happens when a beloved actress sits down for what should be a friendly morning chat and instead faces a barrage of condescending questions and thinly veiled insults from a host who clearly has an agenda? In just 39 seconds of one particularly cutting remark, a daytime television staple would reveal her true colors, igniting a confrontation that would see Rachel Shenton walk off the set with her dignity intact while the host scrambled to regain control of a show spiraling into chaos. Rachel Shenton arrived at the studio that morning, expecting a routine interview. She had been invited to discuss her recent work in a powerful drama about disability representation, a topic close to her heart. The Oscar-winning actress, known for her grace under pressure and genuine passion for advocacy, settled into the bright orange sofa opposite the host, flanked by two other panelists who would soon become uncomfortable witnesses to what was about to unfold. The host, Lorraine Kelly, greeted Rachel with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Beside her sat two regular contributors to the show, a lifestyle commentator named Diane and an entertainment journalist called Marcus. Both seemed eager to discuss Rachel's project, but they would barely get a word in. "So, Rachel," Lorraine began, leaning back in her chair with an air of casual authority, "you have been doing a lot of, shall we say, worthy projects lately. Very serious stuff. Do you ever miss just having fun with your work?" The question landed with a thud. Rachel blinked, maintaining her composure. "I think the work I do is incredibly fulfilling. Telling stories that matter to underrepresented communities, that is fun for me. That is meaningful." Lorraine waved a hand dismissively. Yes, of course. But I mean real entertainment. You know, the kind of thing people actually want to watch when they come home from work. Not everyone wants to be lectured, do they?" Diane shifted uncomfortably in her seat, glancing at Marcus. The tension was already building, and they were barely 2 minutes into the segment. Rachel kept her voice steady. "I do not think telling authentic stories about people's lives is lecturing anyone. These are experiences that deserve to be seen and heard." "Right. But there is a time and place, is there not?" Lorraine pressed, her tone sharpening. "I mean, we have all seen actors get a bit, how do I put this, preachy after they win awards. It is almost like they forget what got them there in the first place. Likability. Being relatable." The accusation hung in the air. Marcus cleared his throat, attempting to interject. "I think what Rachel is doing is actually quite—" "I was not finished." Lorraine cut him off without even looking in his direction. Her eyes remained fixed on Rachel. "You won an Oscar for a short film, which is lovely. Really it is. But some might say you have been dining out on that for quite a while now. How long ago was that? 3 years? 4? 6 years, Rachel corrected quietly, her jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. 6? My goodness, is it really? Well, there you go. 6 years. And since then, you have been doing these passion projects. Which again, very noble. But where is the career, Rachel? Where are the big roles? The blockbusters? The things that actually matter in this industry?" Diane tried again. "Lorraine, I think that is a bit—" "Diane, please. I'm having a conversation here." Lorraine did not break eye contact with Rachel. "I am just asking the questions that I think our viewers want answered. People are curious. You were on the rise. You had momentum. And then you seem to just, well, disappear into these little niche projects that, frankly, most people have not even heard of." Rachel took a slow breath. "I choose projects based on their value and their message, not their budget or their marketability. I believe that is what being an artist means." "An artist," Lorraine repeated with a small laugh. "That is very grand. But you are an actress, darling. Your job is to entertain, to be entertaining. And I have to say, watching you talk about sign language and accessibility and all these very serious topics, it is not exactly, well, it is not exactly riveting television, is it?" The studio fell silent. Even the crew seemed to freeze. Marcus and Diane exchanged horrified glances. Rachel's voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it now. I disagree. I think people are far more intelligent and compassionate than you are giving them credit for. They care about these issues. Do they, though? Lorraine leaned forward, her smile turning sharp. Or is this just you trying to stay relevant by jumping on whatever cause is trendy at the moment? Because from where I am sitting, it looks like someone who had a little taste of success and then could not handle the pressure of actually sustaining a real career. So instead you have wrapped yourself in this cloak of activism to hide the fact that the phone stopped ringing. Diane actually gasped. Lorraine, that is completely out of line. I will thank you not to tell me how to conduct my own show, Diane, Lorraine snapped, finally breaking her stare with Rachel to shoot a withering look at her panelist. I have been doing this for decades. I think I know how to have a conversation. This is not a conversation, Marcus said, finding his voice. This is an attack. Oh, do not be so dramatic, Marcus. I am simply asking the tough questions. That is what journalism is. Lorraine turned back to Rachel, who sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. You cannot expect to come on a show like this and just get softballs lobbed at you. This is not some little podcast where everyone pats you on the back and tells you how wonderful you are. This is real television. I never expected softballs, Rachel said quietly, but I did expect basic respect. Respect is earned, Lorraine shot back. And I am sorry. But winning one Oscar 6 years ago does not give you a free pass to lecture the rest of us about how we should think or what we should care about. Some of us have been working in this industry since before you were born. Some of us have built actual careers, actual bodies of work that span decades, not just a handful of obscure projects that nobody watches. Rachel's composure finally cracked, just slightly. I have never lectured anyone. I have shared my passion for telling stories that matter to me. If that threatens you somehow, that says more about you than it does about me. Threatens me? Lorraine laughed, a brittle sound. Oh, sweetheart, you could not threaten me if you tried. I am simply pointing out that there is a certain arrogance in what you are doing. This idea that you are somehow above commercial success, that you are too good for mainstream entertainment. It reeks of someone who could not make it in the real game, so they pretend they were never playing it in the first place. That is not fair, Diane interjected, her voice shaking slightly. Rachel has been incredibly successful. She is respected in the industry. By whom? Lorraine challenged. Other people doing little independent films that 17 people see? That is not success, Diane. That is a hobby. Marcus shook his head. This is ridiculous. Rachel came here to talk about her work, and you are just attacking her character. This was supposed to be... What this was supposed to be, Lorraine interrupted icily, is an honest discussion. And honestly, I think Rachel needs to hear some home truths. The industry has moved on. People want stars. They want glamour. They want escapism. They do not want to be made to feel guilty about every little thing while they are trying to enjoy their morning coffee. And that is what you have become, Rachel. You have become the person who makes people feel bad. Who makes them feel like they are not doing enough, not caring enough, not being enough. And then you wonder why the work dried up. Rachel stood up. The movement was so sudden that it caught everyone off guard. The work did not dry up, she said, her voice clear and unwavering. I chose a different path. I chose to use whatever platform I have to amplify voices that are often ignored. I chose substance over celebrity. And if that makes me unsuccessful in your eyes, then I am perfectly fine with that assessment. Oh, sit down, Lorraine said with an exasperated sigh. Do not be so sensitive. I am trying to help you here, give you some honest feedback. I did not ask for your help, and I certainly did not ask to be belittled on national television. Rachel's hands were steady as she unclipped her microphone. You invited me here under the pretense of a respectful interview about work that matters deeply to me. Instead, you have used this platform to demean me, to question my integrity, and to dismiss the issues I care about as trendy causes. That is not journalism. That is cruelty, dressed up as honesty. Lorraine's face flushed. Now, you're just being overdramatic. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You cannot handle any criticism. You just want everyone to worship at the altar of Rachel Shenton and tell you how brave and important you are. I want to be treated like a human being, Rachel replied. That should not be too much to ask. You are on a talk show. Lorraine's voice rose, her composure slipping. People get challenged on talk shows. That's the whole point. If you cannot handle a few tough questions, then maybe you should stick to your little film festival circuit where everyone agrees with you. Marcus stood up as well. Lorraine, you need to stop. This has gone way too far. Sit down, Marcus. This does not concern you. It concerns all of us, Diane added, They also rising from her seat. You are being cruel. This is not what this show is supposed to be. Do not tell me what my show is supposed to be. Lorraine's voice cracked with anger. I built this show. Me, not you, not any of you. And I will run it however I see fit. Rachel placed her microphone carefully on the coffee table. I think that says everything anyone needs to know, she said softly. Thank you for the invitation, but I will not be staying for the rest of this segment. I hope you find whatever it is you are looking for. Oh, do not try to take the high road now, Lorraine spat. You are walking off my show because you cannot handle a real conversation. That is what is happening here. You are running away. I am choosing not to participate in whatever this is, Rachel corrected. For there is a difference. She turned to leave, and Lorraine's voice followed her. Fine, walk off. Prove my point. Show everyone exactly who you really are. A quitter who hides behind causes because you do not have the talent to make it on your own. Rachel paused at the edge of the set, her back still to the host. For a moment, it seemed like she might turn around, might respond to this final provocation. But instead, she simply shook her head and continued walking. Diane looked at Lorraine with something close to disgust. How could you? She came here in good faith. Oh, spare me the righteousness, Diane. She got exactly what she deserved. Someone needed to say it. Say what? Marcus demanded. That she is talentless? That her work does not matter? Based on what? Your ego? Based on reality, Lorraine shot back. But her voice wavered. The camera crew was still rolling, capturing every moment of the fallout. Based on the fact that she has become irrelevant, and she is trying to make it everyone else's problem. The only problem here is you, Diane said quietly. What you just did, it was not brave. It was not honest journalism. It was just mean. Lorraine looked around at the set, at her panelists standing in solidarity against her, at the crew watching with barely concealed shock. We need to go to commercial, she said abruptly. Someone cut to commercial. Now. But the damage was done. The cameras had captured it all. The entitled host who had mistaken cruelty for candor. The guest who had refused to be diminished. The panelists who had tried and failed to rein in their colleagues' venom. Rachel Shenton walked out of that studio with her head held high, having stood up not just for herself, but for the principle that compassion and artistry should never be treated as weaknesses. She had come to talk about work that mattered, about representation and authenticity, and using one's platform for good. Instead, she had been subjected to a masterclass in how insecurity and bitterness can masquerade as authority. Lorraine Kelly remained on that bright orange sofa, insisting to anyone who would listen that she had done nothing wrong, that she was just doing her job, that Rachel was too sensitive. But her panelists knew better. The crew knew better. And soon, the viewers would know better too. The confrontation had lasted less than 15 minutes from start to finish, but in that time, something fundamental had shifted. While one woman had revealed herself to be exactly as gracious and principled as her reputation suggested, the other had torn down her own credibility in a desperate attempt to tear down someone else. What started as an interview had become something else entirely. A reckoning. a line drawn in the sand. A moment where someone who had built a career on being relatable and warm had shown that beneath the cheerful exterior lay something far less pleasant. Someone who saw a guest's compassion as competition, their success as a threat, their principles as pretension. Rachel had tried to engage respectfully, had attempted to explain her choices and her passion. She had given Lorraine every opportunity to course correct, to remember that there was a person sitting across from her, not just a target for her frustration. But Lorraine had been determined to make an example of her, to put her in her place, to prove some point that only made sense in her own mind. And when Rachel finally stood up, when she finally refused to accept the treatment any longer, Lorraine had only doubled down, had only gotten meaner, more desperate, more transparent in her need to wound. The other panelists had seen it clearly. Diane and Marcus had tried to intervene, had tried to bring some sanity back to the conversation. But Lorraine had been beyond reason, so caught up in her own narrative that she could not see what she was doing, could not hear how she sounded. "You are making a huge mistake," Lorraine had called out as Rachel reached the studio door. "Walking off this show, it will follow you. People will remember this." Rachel had paused then, and had looked back over her shoulder one last time. "You are right," she had said simply. "They will remember. They will remember exactly what happened here." And with that, she was gone. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than any of the shouting that had preceded it. Lorraine sat in the sudden silence, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. Diane and Marcus would not look at her. The crew avoided eye contact. The studio, usually so full of warmth and laughter, felt cold and hostile. "What are you all staring at?" Lorraine demanded, her voice shrill. "Get back to work. We have a show to finish." But nobody moved, because everyone in that room understood that something had broken that could not be easily fixed. A line had been crossed. A trust had been violated. Diane finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you do that? What did she ever do to you?" Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, to justify, to explain. But no words came, because deep down, even she knew the truth. Rachel Shenton had done nothing wrong. She had simply been herself, authentic, principled, unafraid to care about things beyond fame and fortune. And somehow, that had been intolerable. The interview that was supposed to last 20 minutes had imploded in less than 15. The guest who had arrived ready to share her passion had been forced to defend her very character. The host who prided herself on her warmth and wit had revealed a streak of nastiness that no amount of charm could disguise. Marcus gathered his notes, preparing to leave the set himself. "I cannot be part of this," he said. "Not anymore." "You are under contract," Lorraine reminded him sharply. "Then I will break it. Some things matter more than a paycheck." Diane nodded in agreement. "She is right about one thing," she said, looking directly at Lorraine. "People will remember this. They will remember how you treated someone who came here in good faith. They will remember how you mocked her values and dismissed her work. They will remember that when given the choice between lifting someone up or tearing them down, you chose cruelty." Lorraine's face had gone from flushed to pale. "You are both being ridiculous." She was fair game. She put herself out there. She made herself a public figure. That comes with scrutiny. "Scrutiny, yes," Marcus agreed, "but not contempt. You were not scrutinizing her. You were trying to humiliate her. There is a difference. Gus, and you know it." The floor manager approached hesitantly. "Lorraine, we need to make a decision about the rest of the show. Do you want to—" "I will do it myself," Lorraine interrupted. "I do not need them. I do not need any of them." But her voice lacked conviction. For the first time in her long career, Lorraine Kelly looked uncertain. The armor of confidence had cracked, and underneath was something fragile and afraid. Rachel Shenton, meanwhile, was already in her car, pulling out of the parking lot. She felt the adrenaline beginning to ebb, replaced by a deep weariness. She had not wanted that confrontation, had not sought it out, but when faced with the choice between accepting disrespect and standing up for herself, she had chosen her dignity. Back in the studio, Lorraine was trying to regroup, to salvage what was left of the show, but the energy had shifted irrevocably. The crew moved mechanically through their tasks, the usual camaraderie replaced by an uncomfortable silence. "Let's just get through this," Lorraine muttered to herself, smoothing down her hair, checking her reflection in a nearby monitor. "It is fine. Everything is fine." But it was not fine, and everyone knew it. The segment that followed was stilted and awkward. Lorraine tried to regain her usual warmth, her trademark humor, but it rang hollow. The viewers at home would feel it, that indefinable shift in atmosphere. Something had happened. Something had gone wrong. Diane and Marcus did not return to their seats. The show continued with Lorraine alone on that bright orange sofa, looking smaller somehow, diminished. She powered through the cooking segment, the fashion feature, the viewer emails, but the heart had gone out of it. Every few minutes, her mind would drift back to the confrontation, to the look on Rachel's face when she had stood up, to the disappointment in Diane's eyes, to the disgust in Marcus's voice. She told herself they were wrong, that she had been right to push back, to challenge, to refuse to let her show become a platform for what she saw as self-righteousness. But the justifications felt increasingly flimsy, even to her own ears. The truth was simpler and far more uncomfortable. She had been threatened by Rachel's integrity, by her unwillingness to play the game, by her quiet confidence in her own choices. Lorraine had built a career on being likable, on pleasing people, on giving them what they wanted. And here was someone who did not seem to care about any of that, who followed her own compass regardless of where it led. It had rankled, had irritated like a stone in a shoe. And so Lorraine had lashed out, had tried to diminish what she could not understand, had attacked what she secretly envied. But she would never admit that. Not to her producers, not to her colleagues, not even to herself. Instead, she would insist that she had been right, that Rachel had been the problem, that everyone else was being too sensitive. The show finally ended. The cameras stopped rolling. Lorraine stood up, removed her microphone, and walked off the set without speaking to anyone. In her dressing room, she closed the door and leaned against it, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling in private. Somewhere across town, Rachel Shenton was home, making tea, thinking about the morning's events with a mixture of sadness and resolve. She had not wanted to walk off, but she had refused to sit there and be demeaned. Some battles, she knew, were worth fighting. Some lines could not be allowed to be crossed. She thought about the young people who would see that interview eventually, the ones who were trying to find their own voices, their own paths, their own ways of making a difference. She hoped they would see that it was okay to stand up for yourself, that grace did not mean accepting mistreatment, that you could be kind without being a doormat. Lorraine, in her dressing room, was having very different thoughts. She was already planning her response, her defense. She would paint herself as the victim, as the one who had been walked out on, who had been left high and dry by a difficult guest. She would spin it, as she had spun so many things before. But this time, it would not work. This time, the cameras had captured everything. The sneer in her voice, the contempt in her eyes, the cruelty in her questions. This time, there would be no hiding behind editing or context. The two women, each in their own space, represented two very different approaches to life in the public eye. One had chosen authenticity over popularity, substance over style, principle over profit. The other had built an empire on likability, but had just revealed that the foundation was not as solid as it seemed. In the end, it had taken only 39 seconds. 39 seconds of one particularly vicious comment to strip away the pretense and reveal the truth. That sometimes, the person sitting in the host's chair is not the hero of the story. Sometimes, they are just someone who has forgotten that power should come with responsibility, that influence should be wielded with care, that there is no glory in making someone else feel small. Rachel Shenton had walked off that set, but she had not walked away beaten. She had walked away unbowed, unbroken, and with her integrity intact. And in the days and weeks that would follow, it would become increasingly clear who had really won that confrontation. Not the person who had stayed in their seat, clinging to their authority, but the person who had stood up and said enough. The person who had refused to participate in their own diminishment. The person who had shown that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply walk away from toxicity, no matter who is delivering it or where it is happening. The interview was over. The damage was done. And two careers would move forward in very different directions, shaped by 15 minutes that had revealed everything about character, about values, and about what happens when entitlement meets integrity.